Have you ever wondered what makes bodies tick? Are you creating the sexual reality you desire and require? Would you like to know more about what else is possible with bodies? What if your fantasies are not as strange as you thought they were? What if you could learn to be kinder to your body and kinder to others' bodies? Would you like to create confidence in the bedroom and beyond? How has your sex life or lack of it affected other areas of your life? Have you lost your mojo and wondered where to find it? Everyone has the potency to be a sexual superhero. Get ready to listen, sense, and play with the sexualness that is you. Now, here is the host of The Pleasure Zone, Body Whisperer, Milica Jelenic.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Pleasure Zone. I'm your host, Milica Jelenic. Tonight I have a topic that may bring a few friends of mine in on the conversation. I've asked some people to just jump in freely if they like and join in. A lot of parents having conversations with their kids about sex, because I am aware that I do have teens and preteens who are listeners who listen in with their families. So I want to welcome all ages to this show. So this is going to be like a little less swearing than usual, probably, although my shows have gotten less swearing in the last year or so. I've been taming it down, finding other words to use. So for those of you who are brand new to this show, I want to welcome you. I want to welcome you for your bravery to even listen to a show about bodies, sex, copulation, anything like that, because I know that as a teen myself, as a preteen, I was like really shy about wanting information about sex. It was really cute. We had this show in Canada, and I think Americans got it later on, but about 30 years ago we had this show, and it was on for quite a number of years, Sex with Sue. And it was on broadcast on radio, on a radio station called Q107 back when I was a kid. And it was on Sunday nights, and it was a Sunday night sex show with Sue. And I have to say that was highly educational for me. And I know that, you know, it was before headphones were easy. You couldn't put the headphones into your table radio beside your bed like you could if you were really rich, but I didn't have that kind. So, you know, I would listen to it, and I'd put the radio up to my head, and I'd be listening to Sex with Sue and getting all the great information from her. She had phenomenal information about, you know, things like people would call in constantly, and she had the patience of Job, man, because people would call in weekly and say, I listen to your show all the time. And then they would ask a question that somebody had asked last week, but obviously they were like too busy rocking it to the sex show with Sue to actually listen to Sue and hear what she had to say. So I just say I got a lot of information from Sue back in the day, and I found it was such a gift. And I'm aware that kind of thing is maybe now all left up to the internet. It's left up to pornography. It's left up to, you know, movies like American Pie. It's left up to a lot of things. And I think it's like I think it's very funny that we have relied so much on outside sources to educate our children about their bodies, sex, copulation, and kindness in all those areas. It's really funny that I'd have to say that we have probably more teen sex now than ever, even though we have access to the most information we've ever had on the planet. I think we have more STDs are like on the rise. It's funny because we have access to tons of information. Now, is anybody actually listening to it, utilizing it, reading it, acknowledging it, questioning it? Doesn't seem that way. So I really invite you in this show to, you know, I'm going to bring up some conversation starters that you can have with your kids. I'll be inventing them on the spot, so that'll be fun. I would also like to have some conversations with you, like as a reflection about what things were like when you were a kid, and now the conversation to have with millennials, which is very different than the conversation that was had with anybody who's in my generation or my mom's generation or that in-between generation. Like, people between their 40s and 70s right now, we had a very different conversation. I mean, and that age range from 55 even to 70 was a very different conversation than my age range of 40 to, say, 55. Like, there is a very different information out there now that's available. It's not so secretive, and yet with all the access to it, it's like people aren't as familiar with it as maybe we were, or I'm not sure what that is, but I felt like there's some information lacking. And I'm really excited to kind of tap into that tonight and bring some more information to people. So again, for those of you who are brand new to this show, my name is Milica Jelenic, and I'm a body worker. And what that means for me is that I work with people with their bodies to create ease in their bodies, to create like a sense of ease in their lives through movement, through energy work. I've been doing this kind of work for over 20 years. You can check out my website, www.milicajelenic.com. So that's MilicaJelenic.com. You can find information about me on there, my contact information. You can join my mailing list. I don't send out tons of emails, but when I do, they're, poignant, I hope, and full of information. And also, you can friend me on all kinds of social media like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's just under my name. You can find me there. And also on Facebook, I have a business page, The Pleasure Zone. It's the radio show Pleasure Zone station. So you can find information there. I often post my replays or upcoming shows on there when I'm in, when I'm on the ball. I'll post all that. So I'm really, really curious about, and I'm getting some cute information like my emails are the best, and thanks. And so I'm curious for you listeners out there, if you are parents and if you have had conversations with your kids about sex, about copulation, about their bodies, masturbation, if you've had these conversations with your kids, if you've felt awkward about it, if you feel like you don't even have the information yourself, if you felt like the conversation wasn't quite up to snuff and you could have maybe had an even more fun, more expansive conversation, what if you could? And for me, sometimes I'm aware that there are times where I can throw my daughter into a beyond. She's 8 years old, and the other day I thought, let's watch American Pie. I got all 8 of them, and I didn't even know there were 8. I only knew there was 3. I got all 8 of them, and I was like, let's put on American Pie. This is some funny stuff. Hilarious. Yeah, it's not funny to an 8-year-old. There left some questions out of my brain. Completely forgot to ask, will this be funny to this kid? Not at all. She was actually really shocked and a bit of a beyond and a little offended. There was a lot of nudity. I actually didn't think about it. To me, it was just plain funny, And one of the funniest parts of every movie in that series is that Eugene Levy, as the character Noah Levenstein, in every single one of the movies, all 8 of them, he says, and he always has to bring up the incident with his son. If you haven't watched American Pie, I'm not ruining for this, if you haven't seen it, he, the main character ends up copulating, kind of doing a pie on the counter, and his dad walks in on him, and consistently throughout the series, Eugene Levy brings this up and talks about his, I caught my son in a precarious situation, and he was, trying to make love to pastries. Like, he brings it up in every episode, and he says, and then he adds, and that's perfectly natural. And I'm like, what does that mean? So after hearing Perfectly Natural this whole week, because I went on a bit of a American Pie bender, I was like, what is it perfectly natural mean? And what is it that parents are trying to say to their children when they say, oh, that's perfectly natural. I caught you shoving our cucumbers up your vagina. That's perfectly natural. So is it the parents' way of trying to feel a little bit better about how they raised you? Like, what is that? So, I don't know, but it's perfectly natural. So, I really want to, I really wonder, have you ever been caught in those crazy situations? What did your parents say to you? Did you ever catch your children in those situations? What did you say to them? Did you say, hey, it's perfectly natural? I love those conversations. Eugene Levy as a dad is one of the funniest characters ever. And yes, he is on a show on CBC in Canada. I don't know if you get this in the States or anywhere else in the world, called Schitt's Creek. It is a freaking hilarious show, and it might actually be on Netflix, not sure. I'm plugging Eugene Levy tonight. I actually adore him, and I saw him live once in Toronto at a restaurant, so that makes me extra excited. I literally sat beside him in a diner, and I was like, whoa, it's Eugene Levy, having a very normal conversation just about the year before American Pie came out. So there you go. He was probably filming at the time too. And so what is it that is perfectly natural is my question. And what energy can you be for your kids when you get the bomb dropped on you, whether it's you walk in on them, having oral sex, doing it from behind? Like, what energy can you be to allow your kid to not go into a beyond, so that they're not feeling like completely lost, confused, embarrassed, rejected, whatever it is? I have to say, admittedly, when I was about 22, 20, something like that, I was working long hours. I was working 7 days a week, and I had a very fun life. And at some point, I was going out a lot, and I had met a guy, and I lived in this really, really small apartment, and with my mom, and we basically hardly ever were there. So we ended up hardly ever being in that space. But it just happened that night that since I thought my mom was in Montreal, which is a 5-hour drive from Toronto, I thought, I'm going to have this guy over to my place. So I did. And not only did I have him over to my place, he was still there in the morning. And not only was my mother not in Montreal, she walked in. And to the point where it was like something out of a movie. Like, my mom lost like all of her ability to speak. She kind of turned around, fumbled. Keep in mind, this was a very small apartment. We had all of our stuff like stacked to the nines. It was basically like in a sense, it was like a storage unit that had a bed in it, and that was about it. And we occasionally ate there and bathed there and gathered our stuff and left. It was an interesting living situation. So thankful for what I have created in my life since then. But keep in mind, this was a very small space. So my mom tries to turn, things are falling on her. Like, she knocks into the clothing rack. She like knocks a picture off the wall. She's stumbling. She's falling. Drops a bag of milk on the floor. Like, the whole scene is just a freaking disaster. Why? Because she walked in on her daughter naked with some guy. And it wasn't even that we were like fully humping at the time. Like, that was kind of done, but we're like lying there naked. And it was an interesting experience. It was also an interesting night before that, but that's a whole other story. A story that I would have to call A Woman and an Octopus, because that's the only way I could describe it. This man had more hands than I thought was possible. So I'm just going to call that story, for future reference, A Woman and an Octopus. It was a lot of fun, and it was memorable. So have you walked in on your parents? Guys, I've done that too. Not only have I walked in on my parents, I have found things around the house that I should not know about. So I'm not going to name the parent, but I have found things around some parents' homes at some time that I was like, whoa, what is that? Knowing what it was and trying to hide from my brother that I knew what it was, and just pretending that it was a cat toy with lots of balls on it. Okay, end of that story. when we come back, we're actually going to go to break now. I know I've just been very excited about my life and talking about that for 15 minutes. Basically to bring up that, sex does happen and teens have it, and you might walk in on them, they might walk in on you. And when we come back from this break, we're going to get into the conversations you can actually have with your kids.
Many of us have created a lot of limitations around sex and what we are willing to choose. Would you be willing to explore what has already been introduced as sexual practices on this planet? What else is possible beyond what we have already seen, heard, or thought of? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual revolution? Taking the taboo out of all aspects of sex, sexuality, and copulation. By tuning into the Pleasure Zone radio show with body whisperer Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on a2zen.fm.
What if there's nothing wrong with you? What if you're far greater than you've ever given yourself credit for? What if it's time to know the gift and the contribution you are to the world and to like yourself a lot more? Hi, my name is Dane here. 13 years ago, I started to truly ask questions. Actually, I started to be the question, and everything changed for me. Asking questions opens doors to infinite possibilities. And it's not about finding the answer. It's about being the question. Always. What I'm inviting you to step into is something that Einstein, Marie Curie, Newton, Da Vinci, Gandhi, Picasso, and Aristotle all knew to be true. What if no question is too big or too small? What if anything is possible for you? What if together we could create a kinder, gentler, happier world? Is now the time? Go to beingyouclass.com and sign up for a free video series, My Gift to You. beingyouclass.com. What if you, truly being you, are the gift and change this world requires? beingyouclass.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, please call us in the U.S. Call 815-880-8255-TALK or Canada 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at a2zen.fm. You can also make the choice to ask for comment by email by sending to Milica at milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Pleasure Zone. I'm your host, Milica Jelenic. And tonight, the name of the topic is, What is Perfectly Natural? Inspired by Eugene Levy's character on American Pie. This is like the saying that goes along with teen sex. After watching all 8 of those movies last week, it is so funny to me that, we, all of us, I'm sure, if you've been alive on this planet, have had some kind of incident that, or if you haven't had an incident like this, maybe I'm just highly unusual and have these crazy things happen to me all the time. Maybe I am a character from American Pie and have embarrassing moments all the time. I'm not sure, but I think they made that movie because this stuff happens to people. People have embarrassing situations, maybe not doing pastries, however, other things. So, like the story before we went to break that I was telling you guys, the other one is, yes, I have actually walked in on my, father. It was lunchtime, I was heading off to university. I went to go say bye to my dad and, drove 40 minutes to go and go, Dad, I'm going off to university. And all the doors in his house were locked except for that one back door that I happened to know how to get into. And I made my way into his house. And what did I walk in on? My dad at lunchtime. He's a hungry man. Guys, I'm leaving the rest to your freaking imagination. And then my dad informs me that he's not an angel and this is not the first time he's done this. I was like, whoa, yes, I'm aware that this is not the first time you've done this. You have children. And wow, Dad, so did not expect to see your face there. So that's been one of those things that has actually been definitely etched into my brain. So that's something that, haunts me every once in a while. And for those of you who have walked in on things like that and went, wow, happens. I know for Ziva, she's haunted by me having orgasms. She's like, Mommy, why are you doing that? Will you stop that? Please stop that. It's making me sad. So, that happens. It shows up in our lives. And what kind of conversation can we have with our kids? So my dad's first instinct was to tell me that he's not an angel, which was that he was putting so much guilt into this, like, oh, what I'm doing is wrong. Yeah, what if what you're doing is not wrong? So, that was his first energy there, was like, whoa, the shame and the blame, and he was feeling guilty and had to explain himself. I wasn't looking for explanation. I knew exactly what you were doing, Dad. No explanation required. And now, a few years ago, my dad said, well, now that you're a grown-up, I was 38 at the time, now that you're a grown-up, and then he starts telling me about his sexual endeavors. It was like way more information than I required, yet at the same time I was like, interesting that my dad has this comfort level with me to have this discussion about sex, about erections, about what's going on with him and his body, about what's going on in general. And so for him it was sort of a comforting conversation that, I talked to men about these things and he wanted to talk about these things. It was like, wow, yeah, it is a wow conversation to have with your parent. And I have on more than one occasion. So what if we don't make it wrong or weird? It's really funny because, as much as we think we are there for our kids to educate them, to provide for them, to facilitate them, to, look after them, sometimes those roles get reversed, like with my dad and I end up being the one in the position of being listening and like going, yes, Dad, that's normal, that happens, this is what's going on. Perfectly natural. So, even our children, when they're, say, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, what do they know? Like, what information can we allow them to share with us? Because there are so many conversations that we're not having, thinking that we're the only ones with information. So what if we started to ask our kids, what do you know about this? So now, as much as Ziva was in a beyond after that, after watching like the first 20 minutes of American Pie with me, the first one, I did ask her, I'm like, do you know what that is? Like, what are you aware of here? She's like, yes, I know what it is, and I don't want to see it. I was like, hey, that's totally fair. You are aware of it, and you're choosing not to see it. Cool. If you're running away from it and you don't know what it is, and you're not willing to be informed, that's another thing. But if you are aware of what it is, and you choose, like, no, this is not working for me, it's not appropriate for me, hey, she knew better than I did what would work for her. Kids are smart. They know. Please have the conversation with them because they will let you know when they want to know information. And it's interesting because I randomly get to work in the school system, and I absolutely love working with kids, especially this particular day last week. There was a boy that had come in, and he's in grade 7 or 8 now, I think. And I met him, yes, he must be in grade 8. And I met him 2 or 3 years ago, and at the time he was having girl problems the first time I met him. And he was asking, he kind of pulled me aside in class, cutest little kid, big brown eyes, brown curly hair, just adorable. And he was having girl problems, and he wanted to talk about what to do with girls. And this time, when I came into the class, he had realized that his actions had actually hurt the feelings of a girl, and he was coming into my room. My room that day was like a special room that kids can go into when they're feeling overwhelmed or overburdened, and they can just go in there for quiet time. So I got to be like in the room with all the kids that get overwhelmed and just want to talk about stuff. And so he came in, and he's like, you actually remember me, miss? I'm like, yeah, last time I was in, you had girl problems. And he's like, I'm having them again. And he had written this like beautiful letter to this girl apologizing for her for not standing up for her when these other guys were teasing her. And he's like, I actually really like her. I was just being such a jerk, and I don't even know why I did that. So sweet. Like, these, kids are aware, and giving them space, kind of like that space in the school, to be able to process that is such a gift. Really cool. So, I'm sure that there are, teens out there who are listening who have done that, who have done the shaming and the embarrassing and the, all this stuff where, you actually you don't feel joy in your life, being that towards other people. You kind of walk away feeling like a shithead. So when you are, why would you make yourself feel bad about making other people feel bad? What else is possible? So when it comes to, sex and relationships with teens, I think one of the biggest things that is showing up these days is, with the internet, there's a lot of this body shaming going on. There's embarrassment. There's, guys trying to coax girls into taking nude photos, girls trying to coax guys into taking nude photos, and then having it all spread around and then laughing at each other and not laughing at each other as in, ha ha ha, that was a funny joke, but you know what I'm saying? Like humiliating each other. And there's such a level of unkindness that was really bothering me that when I saw this kid being so kind and sweet, I was like, yeah, this is possible. Like, people can be sweet. And this, this kid is in with some of the kids who are little jerks, and he's willing to change shit, which is amazing. And how brave is he to choose to not be like his friends, to choose to be himself. You might have heard the ad on this show just before this started, Be You, Change the World, from Dane here. He's in Australia right now having that class. And it's so freaking true. Be You, Change the World when it comes to your conversation with your kids and sex, when it comes to having, even when it comes to, if you have done something and you're not proud of it and you feel like a shithead about it, be you and go frickin' change it. Be the kindness you be, so that you can be the invitation to other kids even going, you know what, yeah, I'm not cool with you like harassing so-and-so and making fun of so-and-so, or, and kids, please, like, this is your body. Please be kind to it. If you really, I'm an adult and I don't send pictures like that out. And it's not because of lack of self-esteem. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would I do that? My body's more valuable than that. My life is more valuable than that. I don't require having pictures spread all over the internet. And, I have a sex talk radio show and I talk about this stuff all the time, and I'm not spreading pictures of me around. So I wonder, guys, I really wonder if you'd be willing to ask some questions before, even adults, guys, like, you do realize that these things stay on your hard drives of your computer. They stay in your phones. They are in the cloud. Like, you cannot get rid of them. So, wherever they are, like, if you are sending them to people, via text or something, be aware of what you're choosing, because these things, they stick around. They can haunt you later. They can create havoc in your life in a way that's not fun. And I really would like you to consider that if you are receiving a picture like that, that person's being vulnerable with you, if it truly is a picture of them. And please be kind. Don't be spreading it around. Don't be laughing at them. If you really feel like that's something you need to do, is go laugh at a person, first laugh at you. Then be kind to, like, if you're really going to laugh at how silly you're being. Not laugh at you, like make fun of you. Laugh at you about how silly you're being. Then choose something different. I'm really not looking at you like being unkind to you either. So what would be kind? And for teens, I think one of the conversations that's missing in schools right now when it comes to sex ed is, we tell you your body parts, but we don't really give you any tools to deal with the emotional stuff that's going on, to deal with all of the other things, the fallback, whether it's like you're choosing to be the precocious one in school. And and that may be truly who you be. And now let's give you some tools so that you can manage it without feeling suicidal or off or wanting to run away or any of that stuff, so that you can truly be you, even if you are the precocious one that people call a slut, boy or girl. Like, whatever that is, let's give you some tools. So when we come back from break, I think I'm going to have some guests joining us, and we're going to talk a little bit about some tools that we can use with our kids when we come back from break.
Many of us have created a lot of limitations around sex and what we are willing to choose. Would you be willing to explore what has already been introduced as sexual practices on this planet? What else is possible beyond what we have already seen, heard, or thought of? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual revolution? Taking the taboo out of all aspects of sex, sexuality, and copulation. By tuning into the Pleasure Zone radio show with body whisperer Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on a2zen.fm.
What would you say if I told you that you could change your life in only 1 hour and all while lying down relaxing? Thousands of people all over the world have. What am I talking about? It's called Access Consciousness, the bars. The bars is an energetic body process that contains 32 different points on your head that, when run, assist you in releasing decisions about any area of your life that you have made solid and as a result cannot change. The bars is the first class in Access Consciousness, a dynamic set of tools and information designed to transform any area of your life. When you have a bars session, the worst that can happen is you feel like you had a fantastic massage. The best thing that can happen is your whole life could change. Go to accessconsciousness.com today to find a facilitator to schedule a private session or to find a bars class in your area. Are you willing to give yourself an hour to change your life?
This is the Pleasure Zone with body whisperer Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, please call us in the U.S. Call 815-880-8255-TALK or Canada 613-800-8736. Or you can Skype us at a2zen.fm. You can also make the choice to ask for comment by email by sending to Milica at milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pleasure Zone. I'm your host, Milica Jelenic. I have a friend that's going to be joining us very soon who is a mother of 3 wonderful children that I've met all of them, and ranging in ages like 9, I think, to 14 or 15, or at least that kid looks 14 or 15. Anyhow, they're very cute, and maybe less than 9. I have no idea. But I know that she's had conversations with her kids about sex, and I'd love to hear from you, Katrina. I'd love to hear from you about how you've kind of had these conversations with your kids. Have you allowed them to just approach you, or have you brought it up? You are a nurse, too, so you're going to be coming from more of a different background, too, like, you know, you've got all the anatomy to talk about and everything. So I'm just wondering what kind of information you get to share with your kids.
Yeah. Well, I think my kids, by the way, are 6 and 9.5 and 12.5. Okay. Yeah, Matthew is my youngest, and then the 2 older ones are girls. And yeah, you're right. Like, I think for me, being a nurse has given me a lot of ease with talking about bodies. And I've watched kids be really awkward about their bodies. And I know I was really awkward with my body when I was that age too, because nobody really ever wanted to talk to me about my body parts. And I don't know, I've always had a lot of ease talking to my kids about their bodies, because I just, talk to them about their vaginas or penises the same way I talk to them about their arms and legs, and what I found, like, when my oldest was starting to go through puberty quite early, so like about 9 years years old. I started noticing that, I started noticing it was happening, and I thought, I really need to, explore this area. And they have a program at school, like the sex ed, I guess, if you want to call it. That's not what they call it, but program at school where they introduce the body, and they introduce things very early, like grade 1, right? Like 6 years old. And the cool thing about it is that I always had a letter come home telling me what was going to be talked about, in the following month. So I appreciated that from the school because it gave me a chance to talk about it with them first, in a way that, I wanted to talk to them. And I remember when my daughter, it was clear to me that she was probably going to get her period soon, I went to look for some books because I had heard, a good way to do it is to get them a book and, if you're not sure what to say. And I did that, and I didn't like any of the ones that I saw, because I found that a lot of them had a lot of opinion in them and a lot of points of view and a lot of, expectations or projections. Mm-hmm. And I looked at a whole bunch of them, and I was like, I can do this without the book. I'm not interested in putting all of these conclusions in my daughter's head before she even gets there, For example, when you get your period, you might have cramps, and you might have headaches, and you might have really heavy flow. And it's like, okay, why don't we just set them up for all this stuff, And so I don't even remember how I started bringing up the subject, but, when she was a little bit older and she was asking me questions specifically about sex, I remember she kind of just brought it up unexpectedly one day and was like, "What's sex?" And she took me a little bit aback by it, but I was able to tell her just in a very matter-of-fact way, this body part goes with this body part, because then I know that's the kind of information she was looking for. And and then it was just like, okay, she kind of was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then I remember she walked away, and she didn't ask me again for 2 weeks, and then she came back and she was like, so, she asked me some other questions. I don't remember what they were, but she needed a little bit more clarification. And so I gave it to her, and then she walked away. And then it's like she had to take it away and think about it for 2 weeks. And then she came back. And I remember one time she was like, so, Mom, does that mean you and Daddy? And I was like,
yes, at least 3 times.
Yeah. And she was like, oh, okay. And she walked away. And so there's this, they know, I think we make such a big deal about, having the talk. And I think it's not really always required. I think if you're open and you talk about their bodies, all of their bodies, including, their vaginas and their penises, and with ease. And I think if you have ease, then they have ease too. I don't know. I noticed that she just came and asked me questions when she was ready, and I answered them, and then she left and came back, and left and came back, and and it was easy.
I love it. So really being the invitation for your kids to know that they can have the conversation with you is huge, and I think a lot of kids don't think they can do that, right? They're just no, my mom and dad are prudes, so no, they don't know that. I don't want to talk to them about it.
Well, and it's not to say that I didn't have moments of awkwardness, because I did too, right? I had some times when it was felt kind of weird for me to talk about these things with my kids, but I knew that if I knew that they were aware of my weirdness, and so I had to really be aware of myself and really lower my barriers and look at what was uncomfortable for me and just kind of get rid of that, because I knew that they could perceive it.
Awesome.
It's kind of cool. And now I kind of keep it light, and I joke about it a little bit, and I make it a easy conversation instead of buying into the awkwardness of it.
Totally. I'm gonna see if we can get our other friends on with us so we can have a conversation all together. Awesome. So I want to welcome Julia and Anthony, my newlywed friends.
Hello.
How are you guys?
Hey.
So
Hey, everybody.
Hi, guys. So
Hey.
Anthony is a father of 3, and Julia is a stepmom of 3. So essentially, you're a mom of 3, but people get technical about these things. So
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from you guys. So Julia, kind of like walking in into these kids' lives as a mom, and you've got like a teenager there, you've got like a girl. So you guys are aging in range from like 7 to 16 or something in your home. Is that close?
Yeah, 8 to 16. That's correct.
Okay, cool. So what's it like for you, Julia? Like walking into a home, you've got all these ages, you've got all these different like hormone levels going on. Like, what is it like to parent kids about their bodies?
I've got my own hormone levels too. No, I mean, at first it was like when I first met the kids, I just felt like totally in love with them. I thought they were the most magical, amazing creatures that I had ever laid eyes on, and I just loved spending time with them, like as an authority figure, as a mom figure, but also as friends. Because I'm not that much. I'm 8 years older than the oldest, so but we just had so much fun together. And then when I moved in about 8 months later, after I'd met them, there were times that it was really, really intense, just because like the energies were so intense on me. I had never had that many people like that, like 3 people who were so powerful pulling on me in all different directions all the time, and I wasn't used to it, so I would try to answer everybody's question when 3 people were asking me a question simultaneously while I was trying to already do 3 different things, and it was like but then it's like, I really, really, really use the tools of access, and in terms of like hormone levels in their bodies and stuff like that, that's been just something that I'm lucky. It's just so natural to me. Like, I don't have a point of view about any of it. Like, I think like a month after I met Aria, like I hopped in the shower with her and helped her shower, and like Anthony doesn't have any kind of point of view about it either. And so there's always just been like this space, and really hasn't been a weirdness around it, just because I was never raised with a weirdness around bodies, and so I've been able to find a family that has the same point of view and gift that point of view to them as well. So
that's awesome, Anthony. I'd like to hear from you. Having Julia in your life now, like, what is that like? What I perceive is that like what Julia has done particularly for Aria, with like comfort level being a girl, like she was the only girl on a house with 3 boys before. Like what has that kind of created? Like, what energy is she being that's actually like creating? Like, what is it creating for you guys? I don't know how else to word it. Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, well, for Aria, she'll even say, if you ask her, it's like a dream come true for her. It's something that she's waited for, she'll say, her whole life. Her mom passed away when she was 2.5 years old. And, first probably 2.5 to 3 years, maybe 3 years, every night before, I tucked her into bed, when is mommy coming back? When is mommy coming back? And, and I kept saying she's not coming back, and then it went from, when you get a girlfriend, when you get a girlfriend so I can have a new mommy. And then it got to a point where I was like, Daddy may not ever have a girlfriend, and I tried to really get it out of her head that, like it could be possible, but it may never be possible, it just may not happen, because relationships are not easy, and to find someone that would be willing to come into our situation, I don't know, I didn't think the odds were in my favor. So, if anything, I was trying to say, hey, you know what, honey, what would it be like if you were okay with things just being the way that they are, where it's just Daddy, and so, when Julia came on board and we started looking things a lot more seriously, it's just been like easy, you know. It's just been, you know, Gary talks about like don't do relationship if it doesn't make things like 10 times greater, and it's just been 10 times greater. I'm not saying that everything is perfect, but it is 10 times greater, and all its imperfections, and so in seeing that with my daughter, what can you say about it other than just it warms my heart to see that she has a female companion that she's so grateful for. And even the boys, it's like at night when Joey and I sometimes we'll get into bed before the kids, and even, you know, the teenagers jump into bed with us. And those were things that we did when their mom was alive, and they were much younger, you know. So to even have the teenagers jump in bed with their stepmom, you know what I mean, and with me in there, it's like family. And so I couldn't have scripted, you know, you don't even have these kind of scenarios on a Hallmark TV show. You know what I mean? So it's really cool. Yeah, I'm very grateful.
Anthony, what kind of conversations have you, like with your older son who's 16, and I've heard that he's had, like, you know, I've heard that he's asked Gary questions in classes before, but what kind of conversations have you had with him about sex and bodies? Like, is it kind of like Katrina where she allowed them to just kind of come to her whenever, or have you initiated conversations with them, or how does that show up?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, you know, I've always had the point of view that I keep things very open in my household, which is the complete opposite of how I was raised. It was like, you know, the way I was raised was like keep a secret, and I found out everything out in the street, you know, and on the playground. So I had the opposite point of view, you know, when I'm a parent, I'm going to take a different approach. So once I knew that Elijah, who's 16, he started puberty real young. He was 12, so he's like really developing really early. So I just started talking to him about the birds and the bees, you know. I started talking to him about masturbation, started talking to him about all of it, and or as much as I thought that his little brain can handle. And I tried to, you know, like, look, I'm here for you, you know, whenever you want to talk, no matter how uncomfortable you feel. Now, I guess, you know, it's like, you know, now did he go? I think I ended up planting a lot of seeds in there because, if anything, it raised a lot of curiosity. So then he started, like, going online and he started, you know, he's like, oh, what's Dad talking about? So he would type in, like, you know, different body parts, and then, like, all these pornography sites would come up. And then he got curious with that. And how I found out about that was, like, my computer got locked down. And he's like, hey, Dad, remember when I told you your computer was doing funny things? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, now it's like saying something about the FBI. So I'm like, what are you talking about? So I go up in my computer. So it kind of like backfired a little bit because it raised so much curiosity. Like I felt like he went to all the wrong places to go explore. So I'm like, dude. I'm like, that's what we talked about. Yeah, and I'm like, man, I wanted to show him, like, Kama Sutra books, and, you know, I would have gotten him some Playboy magazines, like old school stuff, you know? Or, like,
what a good dad, those Playboys. I love it.
Yeah, just something a little kinder, you know? So then when that all came up, I was just more angry because my computer got locked down, and I had to pay all this money to have my computer guy, you know, come and fix it. But I was like, and at that moment, I'm like, son, look.
Cookies. And he's like, what kind of pornography are you looking at, Anthony? Of course it's going to be on your head.
Well, you know, and growing up, it was like I always used my imagination, so I would just talk to him about that. But I didn't make him wrong for that part of it at all. And I'm like, listen, if you're really curious, there are places that I'd rather you look than those particular sites because, you know, they're really unkind to the bodies. And that's not, you know, that is one way. That to me, there's magic in all of that. So I would try to explain to him, like, you know, there's magic. There can be magic in communion when two bodies come together. And you know, from my point of view, you know, that's how it should be. And so I wanted him to understand that there's a whole other side to when bodies come together, and that magic is possible. And so, you know, But, I didn't want to hide anything from him, and but, my point of view was just to plant seeds. And then, and then the second guy, same thing. I had the same conversations with them, and then he would overhear me talking to the older guy. I mean, my daughter, who's 8 years old, she wanted to know what condoms were. Well, I explained them to her.
So did Ziva.
I said, it's something you put over the penis, and it's like a raincoat, and
That's funny.
and I said, and I go, how like the seed, which is called the sperm, and it swims inside the vagina to find the egg, and then eventually makes a baby. And I said, well, when you put the condom on, it catches the seeds so that it doesn't go inside the woman's vagina. And she goes, oh. So then we just got a shipment in from Amazon because we like to use lambskin condoms because they don't have as much of an irritation on the vagina. So, but it comes in, and she thought it was like a Barbie present from Amazon. And so she opens it up. She's like, what's these?
Oh, my God, that's
these
awesome.
Are the condoms. These are the condoms. I'm like, would you run upstairs and show them to Julia? And she's like, okay. And it was like no big deal. You know what I mean? It was like
that's my world now, because I'm now like for fun. I'm selling sex toys on, and so I get shipments from like UPS, like big boxes. And Ziva's like, what's in? And she gets I'm like, hey Ziv, those are pretend penises in there. And she's like, oh, again? She's like disappointed about how many pretend penises Mommy's ordering into the house. Why aren't they dolls, Mommy? Why? What kind of frickin' toys are those? Who wants those toys? So before we go, guys, we have 3 minutes left. I would love to hear, what tool would you give your teenage self that would actually have created more ease for you in your life, that could create more ease for other teens listening?
For me, gosh, I wish someone would have told me it was okay to masturbate. I didn't start masturbating till I was 16. God, if someone had told me it was okay to do it, I would have probably started at around 12 or 13 years old. I was like a time bomb. I was a time
masturbation
bomb. So I didn't start masturbating till my junior year in high school. It was like, and I'm like, once I started, I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me this? But I was ashamed even then. I was totally ashamed that I was doing it. So anyway, that would 4. Be it. That's okay to masturbate.
That's awesome. I was like 4, and I still hit it because I was still embarrassed, but I still did it. Julia, what would you give your teenage self as a tool?
Mine is similar, actually. I thought of mine before Anthony said his, but they're the same. But mine would just be to, as long as it's wrapped up, I wish I would have had more fun. Because I was a prude. I waited till I was 19, and I could have had a lot more fun than I did.
As long as it's wrapped
up.
So
I don't know. I don't know if I would tell our kids that now, but that's what I would tell myself.
I love it. So, Patrina, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, similarly, like I think I grew up with a very Catholic upbringing, and I think I really would have told myself that it's okay to have sex for fun, and because I grew up, being taught that sex was for procreation, and just that it's okay to have sex because it's fun. And I actually have told my daughter that. She asked me that once, because she's like, well, how come you and Daddy still have sex? Like, you don't want to have kids? And I'm like, because it's fun. and she was like, oh. So yeah, that's totally what I would have told myself.
I've been asked that same question.
It's fun.
People will get offended. Why are you guys doing that again? You said you don't want kids. I thought you just wanted me. It's like, wow, you don't have to go into a beyond on this. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're just having fun. We're not trying to hurt you. It's okay.
It's. I just want to say, like, it's such a gift to have this kind of ease with talking to your kids about sex. Like to, get a package of condoms in the mail and be like, yeah, those are like it's so amazing. I can't even imagine what that would have been like for me as a kid if I had that in my life. Just so great.
I want to thank all of you guys for being on. If you guys want to ever meet Patrina, Anthony, or Julia, you can find them all on Facebook. Julia Sotis, Anthony Mattis, Patrina Faba. Patrina's also got a radio show on this station called Messy Adventures in Living. It's on Monday mornings. Anthony and Julia travel the world facilitating classes. I think Julia's going to be in Japan soon, right, Julia?
Yeah, Anthony and I are both going.
Cool. So we're done, and thank you guys for joining me.
Thank you for choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone. Milica Jelenic will return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific on a2zen.fm. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on and tuned in to your body.